Hello and welcome to another week of Mastering Dungeons. My name is Sean Merwin, and I am here with the person who I like to call the reason I have to get dressed on Monday, Teos Avadia. Hey, Teos, how are you?
Hey, I can't help but notice a certain sheen to you. Like there's some kind of coating. It's really nice.
Thank you. Yes, it's the bacon grease that I dumped all over myself yesterday.
Yeah, it looks really nice.
Yeah, that was good times. It was good
This
times.
connection does not have smell-o-vision, unfortunately, so I can only imagine now.
No, it's the smell of bacon and despair really was. If you want to try to imagine that. But you know, these things happen, and we move on, and slippery. we move on, we slide on, and now we've got some
spell.
now we've got some D&D to talk about. The first bit of news being that the D&D Celebration play signups are indeed live. So you can sign up for your D&D Celebration games that take place from September 23rd through September 26th. The AL games mentioned the Witchlight Carnival, including a prelude adventure that they suggest you play first, which includes character creation, and then an epic, which they suggest you play second. As opposed to DDAL- whatever, these games use the WBW, which Wild Beyond the Witchlight acronym, which is something new.
Yeah.
And you can also play Ravenloft Mist Hunters and Dreams of the Red Wizard Adventures. So this is interesting. I haven't read in full detail, but you know, when the Ravenloft Mist Hunters game came out, I thought, okay, that's their alternate campaign, and then we will hear, you know, season 11 or however they want to say it, but they seem to be dropping that season blank indicator, because this seems to be the new season. Am I correct? Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there was that news recently where they sort of like seasons are now not core play, other things are, and seasons are, I don't know.
Yeah.
I look forward to finding out what this means.
It's
because
just,
to me, the season is the core. Like, I mean, that the book is the core,
right,
and the season goes with it. And so I almost like refuse to hear what's been told to me, which is that the seasons are now like, and I think the idea is that like the seasons are sort of for more experienced players versus, I don't know. We will figure it out.
Yeah, I'm not upset about it. It's just noteworthy to me that you know, we tend to notice when things change. We being human beings. So you know, this is something that's changed, and I don't know if it's going to be better, going to be worse, going to be the same, but it will definitely be different. You know, and that's a good segue into something I wanted to mention that's not written in our news, but that is something that Teos wrote about aging in D&D, and it sort of goes along with this, right? I thought it was a great article on your blog about aging, right? About being a player in a game that changes over time, and we are as a species not necessarily lovers of change, but change happens. And it just reminded me of this announcement that, you know, change is coming.
Yeah, it's true. You know, thanks for that, for mentioning it. It is a thing that's been in my head a lot, and not just recently. I mean, I think that I have a hunch, theory, call it what you will, that we feel wedded to whatever we started with. Like for me, it's third edition Living Greyhawk was to me what organized play means. For other folks, it was earlier with things like Living City. For other folks, it was 4E LFR, or maybe it's 5E AL. And like whatever you started with, and sometimes it's an initial offering of it. So maybe you started at the very beginning with what AL first did, and that becomes like your reality. And when you're new to it, everything is so shiny and fun. And just the idea of like, whoa, there are these adventures and they're going to come out in series and you can play them whenever. And it's so awesome that you completely disregard anything that's wrong with it. because it's just what is, and you just accept it and you're learning it. And there are like people who've been there longer and they're telling you it's fine. And so you're like, okay, it's fine. And so then suddenly you know how it works. And now change comes. And that's when you start having an opinion, right? Like you love whatever happened before because it was what was. And now, whoa, what I know is threatened and shaky. And so then it seems really weird to us.
Yeah. And there's always that delicate balance between the lessons that you've learned previously and the lessons that you still need to learn based on what's new. And I think you made a great point of that, in that, sometimes we tend to just eschew anything that's new without even trying to learn the ins and outs of it, because we've had to learn the ins and outs of other things. So it really behooves us to step back and take a look at maybe our biases of the past and how it colors what we think of the next thing that's happening.
Yeah. By the way, another thing that's different is that if you go to the straight up yawningportal.dnd.wizards, yawningportal.dnd.wizards.com website, there is an option for D&D Celebration 2021 Portuguese. So you can click directly to register for Portuguese games in Portuguese, which is super sweet. And the whole page is translated and it gives you all the information in Portuguese. So hopefully that'll happen for other languages too, where it isn't just like one web page and you go in between English and Portuguese and it might be kind of confusing to you. You can actually just directly go there. So
nice
for folks who are in Brazil and elsewhere. Very cool development.
That is cool. So you can sign up to play at D&D Celebration. And as of September 1st, probably the day or two after this show drops, or before this show drops, you can register for your events at Gamehole Con. Gamehole Con is taking place October 21st through 24th in Madison, Wisconsin. I know of at least two people who are going to be there because they are speaking to you right now.
Yeah.
We have a few events in common. We are going to do a live recording of Mastering Dungeons and a panel. So we will be doing this plus taking questions and chatting with the folks on Thursday. So if you are going to be there, drop by and have a chat with us. We are going to be also together on a panel called The Fine Art of the Micro Dungeon, which we are doing at the behest of Mr. Mike Merles. That will be taking place on Saturday. Yep. And we will be in a game together, a D&D live stream for Extra Life. This game will be DM'd by Claire Hoffman, and it will be also featuring Bill Benham, Alyssa Faden, and Alan Patrick. So looking forward to the shenanigans that we will be up to in that game. And I have a feeling they are going to be boisterous and probably questionable in taste.
That seems likely. Are you running any other events at Gamehole?
I am not running any games, but I am doing 2 workshops. So how these work is about a month before the show, you turn in some work that you would like to have reviewed and talked about. And there hopefully will be about 8 people in this group, in this workshop. It'll run for 3 hours, and we'll just take work one after the other and then discuss it, look at the design of it. Yeah. And
I hope you can afterwards share that on the podcast, because I think it'd be cool to hear how it kind of went and what you learned from it.
Yeah, I've done it before. I did it once at Winter Fantasy with just adventure design, where the first little bit we talked about like some pitfalls of adventure design, and then we looked at the participants' submissions, and it went pretty well.
I heard one people who attended. That it was great.
Andrew, I can't pronounce his last name, Bishop something, who is in the design contest, was one of the people. Yep.
Wow.
So and he's still in it as far as I know.
Yeah.
So that's great. So that's fun. And you're doing a few extra things at Gamehole Con as well.
Yeah, I've got an Aliens live stream, which is a fantastic game from Fria Ligan. It's based on the movie series, and so we're going to get our faces ripped off and all sorts of other exciting things. I can't wait to have a baby. So that includes Banana Chan, Matt Forbeck, Tony Winslow Brill, and the DM is Andrew Gasca, who worked on Aliens. So, I mean, that should be great. That's on Saturday. And then 2 different days, I am running the Clockwork Tower, which is the adventure I wrote with my son, which is currently in the layout phase. That should be really neat too, to see how people like that.
Awesome. So you can go sign up for that now. And I believe there's also a home version of Gamehole Con that you can sign up games for as well. There's a new D&D survey on classes and subclasses. I did not see this, so I'm going to let Teos take over.
You, if you are at all like me and play a lot of stuff, you could spend your lifetime on this survey. It asks you basically one at a time, like, have you played or DM'd a fighter? And then it'll ask you, have you played a battle master? And just goes through all the player's handbook, fortunately, classes and subclasses. And I could probably have talked about all of them due to all of the games I've had and all the characters I've made. But I eventually just stopped saying, I started lying and saying, no, I have not played this class. Because I was like, I'm just going to not talk about the paladin. And I stuck to the classes after a while that I just sort of really have an opinion on, like the ranger, like the rogue. I was like, it's great. So I just said, no, I've never played a rogue, which is not at all true. And then I just said in the comments, because you get in a little comment field, I just said, this class is great. Don't touch it. It's the one that always plays well, almost regardless of what you do with it. Yeah. But it was interesting, and it was a little bit like the prior survey on races and ancestries, which made some of us wonder, is D&D gonna like create a revised player's handbook? Because why do you care sort of at this level of detail what people are satisfied with, right? Because it'll ask things like, how satisfied are you with the druid overall? And then it'll go into each and every feature that you get, right? Spell casting, wild shape, everything. And then it'll go into like, the druid of seasons. Like, do you like the, this feature, that feature, and just rating all of it. So it gives them a good feel of what people like and not. And in theory, that could just be so that when you're doing future things, you can benchmark against what people like or don't like. But it could also be because you want to revise it, which would really be fascinating.
Yep. So you can get that survey at survey.alchemer.com. ALCHEMER. I can't spell today, even if the word's in front of me.
Yeah, this is a hard link.
It is.
You're going to have to click on that link in our show notes, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Go to our show notes and on our website.
It was on the Wizards Twitter. It was shared on the Wizards Twitter account.
Okay. There are multiple ways to get to it. Give them your feedback. Magic the Gathering has revealed Battle for Baldur's Gate Commander Legends. And as someone who is still not up on Magic the Gathering, I'm going to let Teos take over again.
I mean, the big news is Spelljammer confirmed. Sean, this is what happens when you turn a story over me. Skip over the important part and just say, they showed art of a Nautiloid over the, I think it's supposed to be Baldur's Gate. And this began a number of fun conversations on Twitter. But what it made me wonder is maybe what this is a set that is entirely focused on the concept of that video game, the Baldur's Gate video game. Okay, and that storyline fight between Mind Flayers and the city. Maybe.
Okay.
And maybe Githyanki, since we saw those in there. So if you saw that trailer, and if you didn't, you should, because it's an amazing trailer, maybe that's a Magic the Gathering set sort of playing off that concept, because it's all about Baldur's Gate, and it is a commander set. So this is about commander gameplay where you use these bigger decks, more cards in your deck, and you have a commander who's an iconic character that you're playing out, and it's giving you special abilities. They said there'll be new mechanics. There will be iconic characters. There will be more flavorful spells from D&D, and then commander-style legendary foil legendary creatures. This is going to come out in the second quarter of 2022. They also shared that the Netflix Magic the Gathering show that we've talked about before it's slated for 2022.
Okay.
And they revealed that Brandon Ruth, who played Superman, will voice the Planeswalker Gideon. And it's going to focus in this show on how Gideon and Jace share similar causes but have different perspectives and approaches, which ties into their whole, what color are you kind of thing.
Right.
This was all part of a large Magic the Gathering what comes next announcement. They also shared things like there's this crossover that we've heard about before with Warhammer 40K. There's one with Lord of the Rings. So there'll be these things. One with Fortnite. and one with Street Fighter as part of their secret layer program. So the secret layer things is just like, you can go out to this website, buy some cards that are themed that way. So it's not like there's a huge Street Fighter release. It's more like you can get these like reskinned, re-arted things that are Street Fighter-ish. So I think Fortnite might also be like that. I'm not entirely sure, but Warhammer 40K and Lord of the Rings are actually some like release that's going to happen. So.
Yeah. I mean, why that's interesting to me is if they're partnering with that for Magic, that's just one step away from partnering it for D&D or some other related game.
Exactly. And that is one of the strengths, right? When Hasbro is working with these other entities, then it creates a lot of opportunity for the future.
Yep. They released the Acquisitions Incorporated content for PAX West. So we're talking about early September now, starting at Friday, 8:30 p.m. There will be the main show with Kate Welsh being the DMing Jerry Holkins as Omen Dran, Anna Prosser as Evelyn Marathon, Holly Conrad as Strix Beestinger, and Chris Straub as Cathris Straub.
Yeah. So that should be pretty fun. We'd heard that Mike wasn't going to be doing conventions, so that explains why we don't get Jim Dark Magic in this lineup. But we get, a really fun looking table. And so there's that. There's also, they have their panel, the C-Team Better Advice panel, which we've seen in the past, that is very funny, where in fact, it just opened today via Twitter. There's a link being shared that you can submit your questions for these characters, and they answer it in character. And they're very funny. If you've ever watched this, if you haven't, you've missed out. It's it's worth watching these things because it's so funny to hear them answer anything. People will pose existential questions. They will pose real questions about the lore of the show, and all of them get this just hilarious treatment. So that's always a fun panel. That's Acquisitions Incorporated theme.
Yep. You noted a couple other panels that you thought were interesting.
Yeah, there's not a lot of tabletop this year. But there are, on the board game side, the 100 games you absolutely, positively must know how to play, 2021 edition. This is something that Mike Selinker has ran in the past. And he just kind of very quickly goes through why these different games are important, sort of as a designer, to know and understand. And it's useful for anybody to go through that list because there are some neat design tips that he shares as he goes through it. There's also worth noting, We Need Wheelchairs in D&D Disability Representation. That's Monday, or I should say the Mike Selinker one is Sunday at 5 p.m. So We Need Wheelchairs in D&D is Monday at 12 p.m. That looks to be a very useful panel with a lot of information on disability representation. And I didn't otherwise see a whole lot that was tabletop related. Like often in the past, there's been, like Jeremy Crawford sharing the new storyline, but I guess maybe timing just didn't quite line up.
Yeah. So if you are interested, you now have access to those panels on our in our show notes. We had somebody talking about a spell we made.
We mean you
on YouTube. So Z Beshu created an animated short focusing on a spell called Gift of Gab, which was in the Acquisitions Incorporated book. And it's a silly little spell, but he this animation sort of talks through what happens with it, and it comes at it from a humorous point of view, which is what we want, because it's a humorous spell, but then looked at ways where it could actually be used for more mechanical rather than role-playing uses. And so what the spell is, it's a reaction that you take. It's triggered by you saying something stupid, and then you get to re-say what you said in a different way. So people are trying to say, well, what happens, and what about this, and what about that? No, it all happens within the same 6 seconds. It's not the next round. It's not an action. It has to happen immediately after you say the thing that you want to re-say. And the people within 5 feet of you that heard you instead hear the new thing you said rather than the old thing you said.
Like in this animated video, they have the wizard is sort of showing off to another wizard saying, like, look what I can do. and they'll like call like an enormous, huge ogre type guy something stupid, right? Like, they'll insult them, and then immediately undo it. And so the guy's like, "Oh, I guess everything's fine." And it sort of says like, well, what is really happening? Is it that like reality is bending? Is it that the target now like thinks, wait, I misheard that? Like, what is it that it sort of examines that? But then the funny ending is that then the other wizard casts silence right after they say the stupid thing, and so then they get beaten up and torn apart.
Yep. So yeah, good times. And thank you, Z, for taking the time to look at that spell. We go from the ridiculous to the sublime. Arby's, known for having the meats, now has or had the dice. So as Teo notes in the notes here, it's hard to say exactly why, but you can now get dice from this fast food chain's merchandise store. Except you can't, because they're all sold out at last glance. Clear dice with an Arby's hat inside each of them and the Arby's name on the highest value for each die. Already out of stock, but hey, if Wendy's has their own game, we all know where the big money is. The big money's in dice, right? So that's where Arby's went.
It may have been smarter, right? Like, it's like, why create a whole RPG when we can just make some dice and sell out instantly? But I really have to wonder, did they make like 5 sets? Like, is this just some total marketing gimmick? Like, they might be smart enough to also do that. Like, don't make hundreds of sets, make 4, and just who cares? And it's just about the marketing part of it. I don't know. So in theory, you can go to this website where they sell it on the Arby store, and you can say, oh, let me know when it's back in stock. And just out of curiosity, I put my name in to see if they're gonna actually restock this, because that'll tell us a lot about whether they were serious about this at all. But
and what this is just one more step in the direction of gamers ruling the world, right? I mean, we've heard, even for the last 5, 6, 7 years, stories in major journals and major newspapers about how people who played D&D, in the 70s and in the 80s and in the 90s are now taking over companies. They're now in positions of power in the entertainment industry, in the business world, and they are using their love of games as a marketing tool, as a way to gather attention. And we are just seeing it more and more as time passes.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, it really is sort of fascinating. Any one of these data points that we share on our show would have been such a bizarre thing just a couple of years ago, and so to see all of them come together, it really tells you that things are different. And I think with the D&D movie on the horizon, that's also going to bring out even more of this, right? Because there's going to be that consciousness that this is a thing you can sort of leverage for whatever it is you're trying to do.
Yeah. And role-playing games are in such a weird space that it's not like you need permission from Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro to make dice. Anybody can make dice. Anybody can make minis. Anybody can make these sorts of things that aren't D&D branded, but they are synonymous with D&D. Making it a cheap and effective way to get into the consciousness of fans of that without having to go through any licensing or any legal twisting in the wind. So it's fascinating. It is fascinating. And I added at the last minute a blog by Merrick Blackman on first level adventures. He takes a look at basically a lot of the things that we have been and will continue to be talking about. What's great for low level adventures? What are some pitfalls? What are some things that he loves about first level adventures? What are some things that he tries to avoid in first level adventures? So if you've been digging our conversation, you should go to merrickb.com, to Merrick's blog, and read up on his insights, because he's run hundreds of new players or more through adventures in his time doing Adventures League plus other gaming. So it's a great read.
And did you? Yeah, it is. I read that and enjoyed it. Did you want to talk about the previous item?
Oh, I skipped it. Yes,
Cool.
I did, because that's probably some of the biggest news we've got this week. Renegade Game Studios and Hasbro are now discussing their new role-playing game engine. So we've talked a while back about Hasbro teaming up with Renegade Games to create a game for Power Rangers, Transformers, and G.I. Joe. And what we weren't sure was, would these be 5e games, just taking the 5e engine and updating them for these different products, these different genres? And now we know the answer. They will not use 5e, but they will use a D20 based system created specifically for these games. The system will be called the Essence 20 role-playing system, using a D20 plus a skill die, which can vary in size from a D2 to a D20, and then rolling the max value as a critical, making that smaller die very useful. Each game
reminds
will have,
me of Savage Worlds,
yes,
which has that sort of a
the exploding die. Yep. And so, each game will have its slight differences, but it will still rest on that common engine. And I did not go any deeper in my reading than what are in our show notes. Did you have anything else to add?
No, well, I mean, not a whole lot. They had Renegade Con this weekend, which tells you something about Renegade Game Studios and how they're doing.
Yeah.
That they can throw this, and they had a pretty decent number of people following sort of all weekend long. And they did a lot about more so the board game and deck building, but they did have a session that Elisa Teague ran or led, where she was talking through these various games, and it was very marketing focused. Here's what we're releasing when. You can get the DM screen and the dice set and all this sort of stuff. But just a little bit of, she talked through sort of how to work. So if you're curious for some details, you can get a bit by watching those videos that were, I'm sure, available through the Renegade Game website, or you can find their Twitch channel. One thing that I thought was interesting is there will be some demos taking place at Gamehole Con.
Yeah,
that Alyssa's running and others are running as well. And she did share the names of various people who'd worked on it. So like Paige Laitman and Ben were involved in, I think, G.I. Joe. I could be getting this wrong, exactly which one it was. I think, various other people were involved that are kind of cool folks. So it was neat to hear the names of people that are involved with these teams working under Alyssa. So,
yeah, as soon as I heard that this game was coming out, I went to Gamehole Con and I put in Essence 20, and the only games I saw were being run by Alyssa.
Yeah.
Alyssa.
Yeah,
so,
Alyssa Teague, yeah.
So I was like, oh, I hope they have other people there running these, because I want to play. And so I'll when September 1st, when signups start, I'm gonna head right back over there and see if there are any more games opening up.
Yeah.
And with that, we are out of our news cycle and we are into our discussion. This week, we are going to continue our discussion of first level adventures and intro adventures for D&D, looking at the opening adventures or the adventure setups for all of the hardcover adventures.
Hardcore adventures.
Yeah, some of them
5e.
Hardcover adventures from Wizards of the Coast. And one of the reasons we're doing this is when we asked that question on Twitter about what are the best introductory adventures for D&D, for new players, new DMs, we really got no traction on any of the hardcovers. And so I thought, why is that? Why is there not? Are there no hardcover adventures that had a great opening that would be fun and easy to run for DMs and fun for players? So we're like, okay, let's talk about this. Now, here's a big caveat that we understand that not every adventure was designed for new players and new DMs in mind. And that's okay. That's a choice. And it doesn't do us any good to rail on an adventure as being bad because it does not do something that it was not intended to do. So we are not condemning any of these adventures for being wrong or bad, for not necessarily catering to new DMs or new players. But what we're trying to do is just analyze these adventures,
Mm-hmm.
maybe offer some advice for newer DMs who might actually try to run them, or maybe DMs running for newer players that might need to make some tweaks to accommodate newer players' lack of experience with the game. So if you are a DM that loves improvising and you're experienced and you can take anything put in front of you and make it fun, great for you. But we're going to discuss these adventures as if you're not a DM that is good at that.
Well, and I think even if you like improvising, you probably want it to be clear and you probably want it to work well so you can add to it. At least that's the way I feel. Like I want an adventure to work well so I can then riff easily off of it. If I don't know what I'm looking at, it's harder to riff, right?
Yep. So we're going to go through all of the hardcovers except the ones that are sort of their own discrete and separate things, like Tales from the Yawning Portal, Ghosts of Saltmarsh, Candlekeep Mysteries. Those are more like mini adventures rather than one long campaign. So we're not going to cover those. However, we will cover all the other ones, going in chronological order of when they were released.
I like it.
Now, of course, the first one was Lost Mines of Phandelver, and we've already covered that, so we are not going to take the time. You can go back and listen to our previous episodes to get a detailed look at the introduction to that adventure. So what came next? Well, Horde of the Dragon Queen did, from the Tyranny of Dragons storyline. So let's talk about that in some detail. The first thing to note is when it was discussing how to get characters into the adventure, it said, see Appendix A. So I dutifully turned to Appendix A, and I saw that Appendix A provided campaign bonds that can connect the character immediately to the plot of the adventure. These were supposed to replace the normal background bonds that you would get from your character's background. And these were great. This background information that become part of character creation can actually solve some of the problems that we see in adventure design of how do we get the characters interested? How do we get them information? Just a simple bond like that, pulled from the generic pile and then thrown away and pulled into this more specific bond. So you can be from the town or from the village where the adventure starts, getting rid of that problem of why are we here?
Right. Well, or should we even go to this town, which we're going to talk about? Like an example is one of the bonds is that this wandering monk once saved your life. He sent urgent word for you to meet him in a small town called Greenest. Looks like it's time to pay off that debt. So now you know, I got to get to town. I've got to meet with Leosin. Mm-hmm. And now when we show up at the beginning and we're not sure which way we're going to go, we have an opinion. We're going to that town, folks. We got to get there. My buddy's there. And that is a 9-day difference from if you don't have that. So Appendix A is theoretically optional. No, you really want to use this for this adventure.
Right. And, as we talk about some of the other adventures, we will see that either they do that as well, or they don't do it, and the design suffers because of it.
Yeah.
So right away, when you're running adventures like this, look for those connections that you could make and plan out to have a session 0 where you can get together with all your players to build their characters together, not only integrating the stories of the characters with each other, but integrating it with the plot of the adventure that they are going to be going on.
And can I say that I'm looking at my copy here of this book, which is a very special copy. I won it. I forget exactly how it happened, in an auction or something like that. And I know it was like a random, like a raffle or something. I got lucky. And this is Greg Bilsland's copy, who was a producer at the time for 5e. And we just heard he got a new job. So congratulations, Greg. Yeah. But Greg in this version decorated with sarcastic comments. and it's a lot of fun. And one of the things it has is, like, for example, in the introduction, he writes at the top, season, year, who cares? Yep. And then he notes these kinds of things like we do. So I think it's funny that even somebody who worked on the team at the time, can look at their own, something that was under, the team's purview and say,
right.
Yeah, sometimes there's some things you do about your work that aren't perfect.
Yeah. And that brings to mind something I didn't write in the show notes, but is an important factor in these. This adventure and the next adventure we're going to look at were not initially designed by Wizards of the Coast.
True.
Right. This adventure was designed by Kobold Press.
Yeah.
So as much as Kobold Press is in Seattle, and there are strong connections between the people at Kobold Press, the people who worked on this adventure, and Wizards of the Coast, sometimes there is a disconnect just because of that design setup, where people may have to come in later to fix things or to add things or to subtract things, and may miss places where stronger connections could be made.
Yeah. The other thing being that they had to deal with a version of the monsters and even rules that was not yet finalized. And I had to do some of that too. And you probably did too, Sean, where like I had to write at the same time that this book was being written. So they probably had a very similar situation. I didn't even have CR values. So it was just monsters with stats, some of which later changed. And you didn't know how hard these monsters were. So you just sort of had to run a play test to see if the characters could even survive it. And some things you could expect are easy, like a kobold's probably easy, but you weren't sure. How bad is a displacer beast? Oh, actually really bad for new characters. And you learn that the hard way. So
Yep. So all of that goes into this discussion. With all of that said, I really liked the opening of this adventure as a concept.
Yes.
All of the things that we talked about in terms of starting with a memorable scene, starting with action, starting with the characters having to do something other than just sit back and listen to the DM drone on and on, is great. It quickly gets the characters into a situation that's sort of a variation of the quest board. They can be provided with one or two things, choices given to them, and then they can go and do those things, come back, and then do the next thing, or have something open up because of that.
And Sean, maybe tell us what is it that's happening here?
What is it that's happening here? So let me read the box text.
Sure.
Because here I want, as I read this, it sets the scene, but I also want you, the listener, evaluate what it's saying to the player characters, what it doesn't say that they might need to know, and what it might prompt the characters to actually do.
We dedicate this moment to James and Chicasso.
There you go. For the past several days, you have been traveling a road that winds lazily across the rolling grasslands of the Greenfields. Sundown is approaching when you top a rise and see the town of Greenest, just a few short miles away. But instead of the pleasant, welcoming town you expected, you see columns of black smoke rising from burning buildings, running figures that are little more than dots at this distance, and a dark winged shape wheeling low over the keep that rises above the center of the town. Greenest is being attacked by a dragon. All right. So cool. All right. It's exciting. There's something happening. You can hold up the picture of the dragon over the town. Evocative. Good, visceral. Okay, good. Get the adrenaline going. But as the DM or as a player listening to that, what are you thinking? The first problem is a few short miles away. Unless you're on top of a mountain looking down onto something, how many is a few short miles away? Well, if it was 1 mile, no. If it was 2 miles, a few is more than even 3, I would say. So let's say at least 4 miles away. You can see that 4 miles away.
And also, if I do see that from 4 miles away, the very clear option is, hey, let's find a different town to visit, especially if I don't have those Appendix A backgrounds.
Exactly. Why do we want to go there? Okay, so the adventure then that follows assumes that the characters go to the town to help. Unless they have a reason to go to the town and help, a smart person might just say, well, I don't have really any stake in this, and it's a dragon.
Yeah, I'm level 1.
I'm level 1. I know that's not going to end well for me. Why don't we wait a few hours, and then we'll go clean up any mess that's left over, which then gets rid of all of the adventure that takes place in Green S from that point on. And it's cool stuff, but the second thing is, according to the player's handbook, even at the fastest rate you can travel at 4 miles an hour. That's if you're, running, taking -5 to perception checks, not using stealth in any way, shape, or form. So you're an hour away. If you see a dragon attacking and you're like, I can't even get there for an hour, what is the impetus then? So right away, the players might be thinking, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
What's the point here? This can all be fixed by just starting it 400 yards away rather than 4 miles away.
Yeah. And I thought of this because I watched a video where Mike Merles ran this for, I forget what group it was. It was somebody like Nerdist or something. It was a group of folks who cover sort of geek news. And he started this off, and sure enough, one person was like, well, let's get out of here. And another person was like, I yell at the dragon and I charge it. And it was just so clear. Both of those things are things the adventure does not want you to do.
Right.
But yet, because it's such an open and so far away, anything goes, right? There's no indication of what we should be doing. And that's where a developer really needs to take this and go, wait a minute, folks, we need to move the action to where we're going to get the results we want. Yep. Because if play is so open that we have options that are destructive to the adventure, it's not open play. It's like we've just derailed things. And this is the first scene for a new DM, possibly. You don't want these kinds of things happening. And it was funny. I think even, Mike had to work hard to get the game back on track. Right. Because of that opening, right?
Right. And then if you had, like Teo said, if you have two people that want to do completely opposite things, then it becomes the discussion of what are we going to do? And, it's not like at 4 miles away that one person can wait behind, the other person goes forward, then they get into trouble. The person that waited behind is still an hour away. So, it's that distance doesn't do you any good. So,
and as a designer, if we look at this adventure and we break it down, right, what does the adventure expect us to do? It wants us to get into the outskirts of town. And what it's trying to paint the picture of is a chaotic scene that's in place as the attack has begun. And this should lead us through an initial kind of mission that we hit. It should lead us to the keep, where we will then gather more information and then set out to do more missions. And then we will feel like we helped save the town. And then this overall thing will conclude.
Yep.
That's what it wants of us. But that beginning really throws it off, right?
And so then it says the sun has set by the time the characters reach the edge of town. The layout of information is a little confusing for experienced DMs, not to mention new DMs, because they say that, and then they give the general features of the town. Then they give the important NPCs that the characters won't meet until they get into the keep, which is still a ways away. And then random encounters. So the text can be organized a little better to give the DM the information they need exactly when they need it, not too far ahead of time, not too late, but right. And this is a tough thing to do. This is something that we've all tried to do, and we've all done it wrong, and we've all figured out later, oh, I should have moved this piece here, or I should have changed this here, and it would have been much clearer. So, it's natural to have some disorganization in something with as many moving pieces as an adventure like this. Now, then there's random encounters. And it's like the characters, if they sneak, this many encounters. And there's sort of a very specific stealth check and how many failures cause an encounter to happen. And roll this die, but not this die if this happened. And it's just sort of very complicated. to put random encounters as the very first encounter that you could have throws it into the realm of chaos. And it's not the good kind of chaos that you're trying to show is happening in town. It's the bad kind of chaos where a DM rolling poorly, and not only is the encounter random, but the number of creatures is random as well. So you could end up with like 6 kobolds plus 1 winged kobold plus 4 cultists for a first level party playing their very first combat. Or it could be 1 kobold and 1 cultist, which would then just be, it'd be better than 6 and 4, but yeah, it would be a pushover, but that's okay. The good part is that once they get through this sort of randomness, there is a real first encounter that does the job of giving some information and pointing the characters in the right direction. And we'll talk about that in a second.
And I think what the idea is here is that as you first reach the outskirts of town, you are supposed to, the players are supposed to understand, the characters are supposed to understand that this is under attack. It's not just that dragon. There are these forces, kobolds and cultists and all kinds of things like that, giant lizards. So therefore, they should try to get through the town using cover and stealth. And then the idea is make this check. If you fail or if you don't bother to hide, then random encounters can happen, which I think this whole piece is, come on, they're level 1. We don't need more fights. And if they are fights, they should be really like 2 kobolds. Like it should just be, if you want to intro, right. We're talking about this introductory stuff. A couple of kobolds are fine to just run into. You don't need 6 kobolds. You don't need 6 cultists or 4, 3 kobolds in an ambush drake. Like, no, it doesn't need to be at all challenging, remotely so.
Right.
Because then what's going to happen is what you're talking about, which is we're going to have our first mission. And after the first mission, we're going to face these variable numbers of groups, depending on the approaches we use. And that's a lot to start throwing on characters and on the DM. And this all happens, we should say, in 2 pages of text. So it's all, it can easily be, it can be so hard to grasp it.
Yeah. And so really what we're talking about here is either directly or indirectly, you need to give the characters a goal. What this adventure tries to do is say, hey, you have lots of options, characters. You can fight, or you can sneak, or you can bluff. You can do all these things in this chaotic scene in order to get through. The problem is you do not know what you're getting through to.
Yeah, it doesn't, you don't know get to the central keep necessarily until you meet this family that you're supposed to rescue. Yeah. But it's easy that a DM could have these other encounters first and sort of, it just needs a little bit, that's it. And I think that as a designer, splitting things up is really important, right? To segregate things into scenes. So scene 1 is you see the dragon and you should want to go to town, which probably means you should be closer to town. So if I were running this, what I would do, and I've run this before and had it run for me, is start closer to the town, right? Like much closer, just outside the gates as this shows up and the attack begins. So you want to go inside, and then you see from other sides of the town, all these foes have shown up, and you've got to get past them to try to find some safety. Anybody can tell you, anybody running through the streets can tell you there is safety in the keep and perhaps organizing a resistance there. Let's go to the keep.
Yep.
Along the way, we're going to go to scene 2, which is finding this family, right?
Yep. So as Teo said, just give that detail. Describe the people running into the keep, or start with, you see all this chaos and you see a family come from around a corner of a building with kobolds moving toward them menacingly. Now the characters have to be close enough in order to get there to help, but there's their goal. Their goal is, we're going to help this family because it's being called out specifically by the DM.
And you made some good notes here that when we're told about the family, we're given some details that are also sort of confusing because they don't really jive necessarily with the information we have.
Right. So the event, it says, this family comes around the corner. There's children, a mother wielding a spear, and then a father who's obviously very injured. We need to, we're given that her name is Leanin Swift. She's trying to get her family to safety. So there's your goal. You want to rush up and do it.
And we initially fight 8 kobolds to save them. With that part straightforward. Hey, they're attacked by 8 kobolds. Let's take them out. So we do.
Yep. And so this is possibly the first combat of the first adventure that you are running as a DM. And it can become very complicated if you follow the directions given in the adventure, or sort of the half advice, because it says the children can move at 20 feet. Okay. But we don't have any maps of the area. We don't have any details. We don't know where this takes place in the town. It just says it happens as the characters are moving through town. So the speed of the children is sort of irrelevant unless you are going to run a super tactical. You need to get 250 feet to get them to safety, and blah, blah, blah. It shouldn't really matter at this point. If this is the first combat, you don't want to hamstring the characters any more than you need to, because they've got 8 kobolds to fight. And if there's only 4 characters, 8 kobolds can be a deadly fight.
Right.
It says if you try to pick up a child and run, you attack with disadvantage, or you can only use one-handed weapons instead of two-handed weapons. Again, it's cool if you're a super tactical group, but just trying to get this adventure, started and get one combat under their belt of new players or a new DM doesn't need to be there. Just deal with the kobolds.
And the thing, as you said, we don't know where in the town we even are to begin with. We have a map of the town, but it's quite, open and non-gridded. I mean, it has a scale, but it's sort of 600 feet wide. So theoretically, it shouldn't be more than, like, say, 400 feet that you're moving to. But there's no sequence. You haven't set up the encounter is not set up to measure time off. So it sort of doesn't. It's an interesting piece of advice, and that's where it'd be nice if the advice were a little more suited to what is happening, which is it shouldn't matter what your movement speed is.
Right.
Players may very well decide they want to carry children, which is cool. And then if anything, I'd want to sort of give an advantage for doing that rather than a disadvantage, because you're trying to move faster.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Yeah.
And if you want to do something cool other than just the combat, keep it as simple as possible. As you fight, the children begin to panic and run away in the wrong direction. Without using an action or a bonus action or a reaction or anything, one character can attempt a persuasion check or an intimidation check. Mm-hmm. If they make it, the children follow their directions. If they fail, they stay still. And after 3 successes or 3 failures at these checks, the children either get back into line or, run off completely. And that doesn't complicate the combat. It's just one more check in, to show the social aspect of the game.
Yeah. And what we hear is the characters must make it past 3 groups of raiders. And that's where you get to roll to see what these raiders consist of. So we may have had random encounters. We've fought the 8 kobolds to save the family to begin with. Now we got to move through 3 groups of raiders that are going to show up. And as we present the players with these groups of raiders, which is probably not on a map, or, there's at least no map to town. We may use a grid or not for combats. But if we present the situation, it does say here, which I like that it does. It says, the characters can fight, sneak, retreat, try something clever, such as bluffing. And what we don't get here is the DM isn't told how to enable that.
Yep.
And that would be really welcome for new DMs, because new DMs might say, okay, great. But if you just say, well, there are 4 goblins there and the players don't know any better, they'll just start attacking the 4 goblins or 4 kobolds. Mm-hmm. And if you want to create different types of play, you have to set it up a bit more. Like they're at a checkpoint, though they seem to be distracted, arguing amongst one another. Mm-hmm. That kind of detail will give players a clue that you don't just have to attack them. You could sneak, or you could try something like listen in on what the discussion is about, and then try to make that worse, or throw a stone to one side. And so just a little sidebar, or just even a paragraph of text that could have helped to provide hints towards what to do, that would have been really welcome here.
Yep. And so once they get this family to safety at the main keep, and the mother, I'm trying to find her name again, Leanin Swift, tells them, hey, everyone's running to the thing. We should get to the keep. Good. Now you've set up that goal. So that's great design. Once you reach the keep, the adventurer says, hey, if you're using milestone leveling, now's the time to go to level 2. And that's a great idea. And that is really all we need to cover in terms of getting the intro, this first level chunk of this adventure, put away.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it just shows you how in just a couple of pages looking at the intro of this adventure, there's a lot that you can think through how to do differently, right? And which speaks to how hard it can be for DMs to think through this too.
Yeah. So the next adventure, and the last one we'll cover today, is Princes of the Apocalypse from the Elemental Evil season. The first thing to note is that this adventure is basically meant for third level characters and higher. So they've just totally skipped the first level, or they attempted to skip the first and second level versions of this. But someone must have said, well, we need to do something for first level characters, so we'll stick that in chapter 3.
It's such a weird design, because like if this had been the first adventure, I would have totally understood. Hey, we want you to play the starter set, and after the starter set, play this.
Right.
But we actually are now like several months past all these releases and past Horde and Tiamat and all of that. So some people have played an entire campaign and are starting their second one with Princes. And some people are new, and some people don't have this starter set. So it's a really bizarre thing. And all of this that we're going to talk about is made harder because of the double duty that the adventure tries to do between balancing, are you starting at level 3 or are you starting at level 1?
Mm-hmm. So if you go to the section of the adventure in chapter 1 called Starting the Adventure, this is what you're told. If the characters are first level, use the adventures at the start of chapter 6 to get them to third level, at which point they're ready for the main adventure, which begins with the missing delegation in chapter 3. So not only are you told to go to chapter 6, but the adventure doesn't start till chapter 3. So what's chapter 2? Well, we'll get to that. You can also skip the introductory adventures in chapter 6 and begin playing the main adventure with third level characters. All right, well, I want to start at first level because I'm a new DM and I've got new players, so I need to start at first level. So I flipped to chapter 6. You get this description of the town, Red Larch, and then some other text. Red Larch is a town on the long road, a few days travel north of Waterdeep and a few days travel south of Tribor. It's a way stop for caravans coming to or from the cities of the north, with an inn named the Swinging Sword, a tavern called the Helm at High Sun, and many craftspeople who cater to travelers. Then it tells you, for descriptions of buildings and NPCs in Red Larch, see chapter 2. So you read your first part of chapter 1. Now you've gone to chapter 6, but now you're told to go back to chapter 2. So it says the characters might be locals or travelers. They and players learn about the area as the party explores the town and meets its citizens.
I'm sorry. Can I just pause here?
Yeah.
Don't make your characters locals. Why did you say that? Because if you're local, then you're supposed to know all this stuff.
Right.
And that actually makes it so much more complicated, because I always hate this, and maybe this is just me, but it's a pet peeve of mine, that if people are supposed to be from here, then there's a real disconnect between their character and the player, because the player is learning it for the first time. and their character is supposed to already know it, and should actually then have valuable information to give everybody, but doesn't. And I really dislike that disconnect. So this idea of like, maybe they're from here, like, well, then you better support that.
Right. It does make it harder. What I like to do is take one character, say, you were born here, you grew up here, but you haven't been back in 5 years. So you sort of know some history that then I, as the DM, can give to you without having to go through an NPC. I could just say, hey, Trogdor, you know that this town, this place used to be this, but now it's this. And
because specifically to this adventure, there's a whole thing that's going on, right? So some spoilers to this. There's a sort of secret society in play. Mm-hmm. So, if I'm a local, wouldn't I have heard some rumors about this? Would I have some insights into it? And who do I know in town? Because am I a member of the secret cult?
Right.
Like it just gets so. It's a.
Yeah, and they use the factions to give motivations to characters.
Yeah, and by factions we mean things like Emerald Enclave, the Lord's Alliance, and
Zentarum, Harper's, which is good. It's a useful tool, but it's not as intimate and it's not as strong as giving a background that ties you to a place. And it's hampered overall by this. We're going to start at 3rd level, but here's some 1st level stuff. Make it work. And it's very confusing. So
I want to pause and say some good things. So one is that I think, given the faction format of what D&D was trying to do at the beginning of 5th edition with factions, there's some really neat uses of that make characters, players feel like it's awesome that they're a member of a faction. I like that. Sure. I think Red Larch is an awesome town, like super cool. A lot of towns, you don't even know why they exist. And Red Larch has these several businesses, this whole like wagon right type thing going on, and the mining of marble that's used in Neverwinter and Waterdeep. Like, really well done. Like, it feels like a living place and a real place, which is shockingly hard to do. Like, if you sit down to do it and try to come off that way to players, really hard to pull off. And this Red Larch design, that is the thing that I think Green Ronin really nailed with this. This is a really neat town, and has a lot of depth to it with their businesses, and it feels real and it's fun to explore. I like that a lot.
Yep. And sometimes the better the place is designed, the deeper it is, the more you have to make sure that the DM connects the story, the action of the adventure, the plot with that. And so what we see then is when we get into these missions that you're supposed to run for 1st level characters, you don't get any backward connection to the town. It just says, oh, here's the first mission, bears and bows. Okay. The constable hears rumors of bandits south of town. Okay. He's heard rumors of bandits, or there are actual bandits. Does he know that someone was attacked? How do you have rumors of bandits? Either you're the sheriff, you're the constable, either someone came to you and says, I was attacked, or someone wasn't attacked. And then, so he asked the characters to investigate. Oh, okay. Is he really, really busy? Now, there may be things in the town that answer these questions, but it doesn't say, see page blank,
right,
for what the constable knows. Even just 6 characters of a page number, PG dot space 42. Then I know, okay, I'll flip back to page 42 and read about what the constable knows and why he's not investigating.
And just to touch in something we talked about in our last show, where we talked about how Dragons of Icespire Peak has that sort of quest board model where you show up and there are like 3 quests available.
Yeah.
And what's nice about that is that the DM gets to have a hand in what those 3 quests are, and it keeps things very simple for the players. It may seem a little dry or lacking flavor, but what we see here is you sort of are supposed to come to town and visit the town. And as you go to these various locations, you'll pick up rumors and information from people you talk to. And it's made confusing because all of those descriptions in chapter 2 are doing the double duty of if you're third level or if you're first level. And it also means that where they go to is totally random. Like if they decide they want to go to the tavern, they may right off the bat hear a level 1 rumor, which is, hey, my boss seems to be sneaking around the mining area or cart area. I forget which one. There's a sort of secret entrance there. And this happened when I ran it for middle school kids. And they were like, well, let's go there. And I'm like, ooh, that's the level 2 area.
Yeah.
Once I look it up, I'm like, oh, that's the level 2 area. So I had to find ways to sort of distract them from getting to that too soon. And that's the kind of thing that happens when you use this model, is you just don't know whether they're going to go to the clothing shop, which leads to the really good, maybe these bears and bows is a really nice introductory thing. But if they never visit the constable, then they're not going to do that one, but that's the one you'd rather start with. And that's, so there is that angle to where you almost want to, as DM, think, well, what do I want them to do? Yeah. Because then I want to edge them towards those locations. And should it really work that way?
Right. And it's a balancing act between giving them something fun to do that connects to the main adventure without pushing them directly into the main adventure that they're not ready for yet. So for the bears and bows, it's, oh, there are bandits. Hey, you go out south of town. Sure enough, there's a cave and there's bandits outside. Oh, there's a bear in a cage. Okay. We fight the bandits. We release the bear. The bear mauls the bandits. Yay. Fun encounter, no doubt.
Fun.
Here's some coins. But there's not even a hint of the elemental evil portion of this. Yeah. The bandits, one of the bandits had a tattoo that was something, but it was burned off, and you can bear, that sort of thing needs to just the slightest touch that's reasonable, doesn't have to push them in a direction, but it gives a clue.
And this is something where we can give great praise. And this comes up a lot, that people say, for being the first adventure, Horde of the Dragon Queen actually does a lot really well.
It does.
And one of those, the story is always there. It's about dragons. Yep. And we don't know exactly what's going on, but it's interesting, and we get to keep contributing to it the whole time. People ask us, the heroes, to do cool things related to this one storyline from the beginning to end, and it's an epic journey, and that's awesome. Most of the other adventures, it's like they don't want to tell the story that they literally sold you, right? Like it's on the thing that's on the cover of the book. It's like they don't want you doing that, right? It's we see it in Tomb Annihilation, like try the dino races, but you don't have time for them.
Yeah.
Or it's
true.
Like, take on the rhyme. It'll be done in the middle. It's funny. And this is the same kind of thing where it's like, there's supposed to be this elemental evil stuff going on. Help me get there.
Right.
And none of these little quests really touch on it, except the sort of what should be the last one when you're level 2.
Yeah. Yep. So, bears and bows, haunted tomb. If there's a reason to go there, it's not told in this section. It's like these 2 NPCs know about the tomb, but why do they tell the characters to go there? Maybe we learned about that back in chapter 2, but it doesn't say see chapter 2. It's bizarre. Bloody treasure. This one's my favorite. Hey, there's treasure at Trickle Rock Cave. Actually, there isn't. There's 4 Sturges though.
And I think what this is this is one that if you go poking around trying to find info on the kind of secret cult that's in town, they tell you about this. So it's almost like they want you to die here.
Okay. See, and this one that would be great to know without having to read or, be told.
And this is one of the things I would highly suggest to anybody running Princes of the Apocalypse is way back when this came out, Power Score RPG put out a guide to this adventure, and it is, it'll save your life running this adventure. I was using that the entire time I ran this because it helps you understand these things, and because the adventure is so confusing.
Yeah. And then the next 3 I think are kind of related. There's The Last Laugh, which is a skull stuck to a tree with an arrow, with black parchment around the arrow that says, "The last laugh, you'll be next, Valklundar." And that's all it says. But if you handle the arrow you have nightmares, and for the next 10 day, undead attack them more reluctantly, targeting you last. I'm like, okay. And then there's the Lance Rock, which is sort of the introduction to the Necromancer's Cave, which is the big dungeon crawl for the first level characters. So Lance Rock says characters who confront troublesome situations in the wilderness attract the attention of Kaelessa Urkel, proprietor of the Swinging Sword. Kaelessa believes an evil influence emanates from Lance Rock, being the source of Red Larch's troubles. She asks the characters who should be first level to find out what's going on. The characters discover that a necromancer who styles himself as a lord is lurking in the cave near the landmark. So
can I just say, I want to butt in here to say that in an adventure that has a secret cult going on, when some person just says, hey, I think there's a necromancer in a cave, my players were like, oh, she's with the cult and trying to kill us off, because that is the weirdest thing. It's sort of like the constable. Like, did somebody get attacked by a necromancer? No. Did the necromancer come to town and threaten you? No. So how do you know this? I just kind of heard of it. What?
Yeah.
It's like, why did you make it an implausible thing? Like, give me an actual reason why you heard of this. Otherwise, you sound really suspicious in an adventure where I'm looking for suspicious people.
Yep. and so with nothing else left to do, I guess the characters go off to the Necromancer's Cave. And it's typical of, dare I say, a Necromancer's Cave. The first chamber has one zombie. The second chamber has 2 zombies. The third chamber has 3 skeletons. So they changed that up. Ooh. And it's fine, right? It's fine. It's neat. It's, hey, let's get these first level characters some experience, get them through some combats. But it still doesn't necessarily. And then, okay, to their credit, at the end of this, the necromancer runs away and hides, and at this pedestal in his like work chamber, there's this elemental eye that hovers there and then disappears, and he's afraid of it. And that's good. That it's good in the sense that it at least touches upon what's going to be coming. But doing it in the way that it's done, I'm like, oh, I want to know what this is. Why is this rock showing this? Is this rock magical? What does it connect to? And there's no information. It's a very bizarre thing. And because it's bizarre, you want to know. If it was just some symbol thrown on a scroll, you'd be like, okay, this is a clue. But this is like more. This is something that begs to be investigated, and we're not told why it's there. We're not told why this eye and this pedestal mean anything at this location. Yeah. So it's just sort of left there, and you as the DM are going to be questioned, and you might not have an answer.
Yeah, it's tough because having run this with middle school kids, it was quite the challenge later on in the adventure to keep them remembering why they're doing all of this and how the story links around the Mirabar delegation and all these different aspects. And I think that was a struggle in part because this beginning so didn't build anything up, especially as compared to something like Horde of the Dragon Queen that really does build up.
Yeah.
And so it would have been nice if these quests were dealing with sort of hints of elemental evil and strange, those activities, that would be a lot more interesting, right? And would build up to, there's something really serious that's starting to happen in this area.
Yep.
Now, when I get this thing about the missing Mirabar delegation, it's likely this cult, and it all becomes more important and more engaging. Because engagement, I think, is one that's if I summarize one fault of this adventure, it's keeping people focused and engaged on what they're doing and why.
Right. And then if you complete the Necromancer's Cave, it suggests that you become second level, and then you can move on to the Tomb of Moving Stone, which is its own adventure for second level characters. But that's beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here. So there you go. So those were the first two. So again, I want to reiterate that we're not trying to put these down. We're just trying to discuss them in a way that we as designers look at our own work and try to make it the best it can possibly be for the audience at hand.
Yeah. And learn, because what I like about what Princess is trying to do is to create a really remarkably open experience, given, say, a lot of previous adventures in 4th and 3rd edition, especially, where this adventure would have just been one linear quest after another, start, end, all very hammered out, very dry. So this tries to give you this whole, like, as you go around the town and you talk to people, you end up on these different quests. But as we can see, that is its own challenge to do that design. So we try to learn from it because we want to have open experience, but also motivation and not hard to run and all that. Goals. I think you're right. Goals is a big theme of what works, right? Motivation, something the characters should 100% know what they're doing and why.
Exactly. All right. So with that, we will end for this episode. Next episode, we will look at some of the next few adventures in our queue, like Out of the Abyss and Curse of Strahd. So with that, thank you so much, Teos, for joining me today. Thank you so much, listeners, for putting up with our nonsense. And thank you to our patrons for putting a few coins in the coffer to keep the lights on here.
Indeed.
So if you would like to become a patron of the show, you can go to patreon.com/MMP. Teos, where can people find you or your work?
You can find my blog at alphastream.org. Get free stuff. Sign up. Don't miss anything. You can find me on Twitter at alphastream. Sean, where are you?
I am sitting at home, but on Twitter, I am at Sean Merwin. You can follow the podcast's Twitter at Mastering D&D, or you can go to the forums at forums.misdirectedmark.com and talk to us directly. Mastering Dungeons is a Misdirected Mark production. So, Teos, now that we've navigated not one, but two adventure introductions, what are we going to do now?
Let's charge at that blue dragon. It's 4 miles away. All right.
It may be dead by the time we get there.
Let's do it.